China. It's undoubtedly economically powerful, but it isn't free or open. And its people, on the whole, aren't prosperous. The country has the second biggest gross domestic product in the world, but its population is also massive. Divide its GDP among each person, work out how much they can actually buy for their money, and China plunges to 79th in the world.
You can't actually have a modern, innovative economy under a totalitarian dictatorship. There's no precedent for that in world history, and I think you see lots of mechanisms for why that's not going to happen. Who benefits from inclusive institutions ultimately? Ordinary people, the great mass of people. So those people have to have political power to determine institutions. That's the key thing, and they don't have that in China, and that's why I say that's not a sustainable mix. You know, many people still see, you know, the United States or the Western powers as colonizers. You know, like Western powers come, they tell you what to do, you know, they kind of, you know, they boss you about, they say if you do this and that, we'll give you money. You know, what you should really do is like be more like us, you know. And that's very annoying for people in the global south, I would say, you know. And I'm not sure it's such a bad thing if there was a rebalancing of that, you know.
After all, the United States itself had a long journey to get to where it is today. The US could argue that by 17th century standards, its founding ideals were relatively inclusive. However, in practice, its early economic prosperity was heavily reliant on the exploitation of enslaved people, while women and indigenous people were excluded from those fundamental rights.
The civil rights movement was, you know, the final attempt kind of, you know, to abolish the extractive institutions of the US South, culminating in, you know, the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And that was about the collective action, you know, of people who suffer under extractive institutions, forcing the system to change, you know, and that gives you a sense of our general idea of like, how do inclusive institutions come about in the first place?
And because inclusivity is an ongoing project, there's no guarantee that progress won't be eroded or even undone, weakening the institutions of state. This is the charge against Donald Trump, that the world's most powerful economy is binding once independent institutions to the will of one man, undoing the very system that made America and democracies like it prosperous in the first place.
I mean, I'm an optimist in the sense that I think if you looked at the world over the last 250 years, there's some things that have spread. You know, we have this notion of rights now. People have rights, people have fundamental rights that are kind of above anything, you know, and I think people are willing to kind of fight for those rights. Could that go into reverse? Yes, there's nothing inevitable about that. You have to make it work, you know, it has to work. It's not, we don't just like have an election in Congo and then go home and celebrate how great it was that we had an election. No, that's just the start of the journey, you know, that's just the start of the process. This is a moment with terrific challenges, it seems to me, and we need to step up to the plate, you know. So, and you're not going to step up to the plate if you're complacent and don't recognize the challenges.